Welcome back to the Imperfection Wellness Podcast. My name is Scott Possley, your host, and today we're talking about the lean in and let go technique. This is the sixth concept of Possley's paradigm, and this practice is transformative. It helps release the emotional burdens we may not even realize we're carrying. And these are the weights that drain our energy, and they hold us back from fully experiencing the present moment. To get your free copy of the paradigm in its entirety, which also includes a description of the 9 concepts, go to imperfectionwellness.com and click on Possley's paradigm. I always say to people, print it out, have it as a reference, look at it and utilize it. It's not kind of a one and done. And specifically with lean in and let go, the concept we're talking about today, we're going to talk about leaning into the discomfort of allowing suppressed feelings or emotions come up as we breathe through the discomfort and let go of the emotion behind it. This practice helps us find more peace and freedom in our daily lives, and once we realize the emotional burden, we're able to live more comfortably and more authentically as ourselves instead of hiding or living as the thoughts in our head. We'll also talk through the process of letting go, so you can begin releasing this stored energy that may be showing up in your life as stress, anxiety, fear, and even physical tension. And this may be a bit overkill, but I just kind of want to share this. That before we begin, I do want to give a disclaimer. Leaning in and letting go can bring up some challenging emotions, and if at any point you feel overwhelmed, it's okay to take a break or reach out for support from a medical or mental health professional. As I want to be clear, I'm not dispensing medical advice. I'm not prescribing the use of any technique as a form of treatment for any kind of physical, emotional, or medical problems without the advice of a physician or other trained medical or mental health provider, whether that's direct or indirect. The material discussed here today is intended for educational purposes, and the intent is to offer information of a general nature for your overall well-being. Some stored events that you have may be too traumatic for you to do this letting go technique on your own. So please always reach out for help. This information is not meant to take the place of formal diagnosis and treatment by a qualified provider. And if you or someone you know needs any immediate help, remember, there's a toll-free suicide and crisis hotline available 24/7. Simply dial 988. And why do I share this disclaimer? Because there were times in my life where my mental health was frail, and I want to intentionally be overly mindful of this. And that's why I gave that disclaimer before we dive into today's topic. So please be mindful of that. All right, back to letting go. What does lean in and letting go really mean? When I talk about letting go, I'm not saying to forget, deny, or ignore any past experiences. Letting go doesn't mean we condone things that hurt us or pretend that they didn't happen. It's not about saying that those things didn't matter either. Letting go is about allowing the emotions and energy attached to these memories come to the surface without pushing them away or repressing them. It's about acknowledging what we feel and then releasing the weight of that feeling so it doesn't control our lives anymore. David Hawkins, who's one of my favorite authors, wrote an entire book on letting go, titled Letting Go. In the book, he dives deeper into this concept about how we have within our direct control a way to release years of stored stresses and their emotional energy, which lead to physical and emotional healing. I highly recommend this book. It's one of my top 5 books. Just love it. And that's why I share it with you. Emotions, especially the heavy ones, and stresses are stored in our bodies as suppressed emotional energy. And when we suppress these feelings and emotions, we're carrying that energy with us every day. It can show up as tiredness, stress, irritability, tension, anxiety, or insomnia. And letting go allows us to face these emotions and these feelings slowly and safely so we can release them from where they're stored. Personally, for many years, I carried around the belief that I was too much for people. At a young age, I was told my personality was overwhelming, that I was too much to handle. And I knew I was gay from a young age, and fearing that people would find out and disown me, that wreaked havoc on my well-being. I never felt like I fit in. I was feeling like I was on the outside looking in, feeling like I was broken. Even though I didn't always think about this, these words that you're less than sat in my subconscious for so many years. It shaped my interactions. It made me feel like I was less than. And this led me to act out in many ways because I held this secret. No one knew why I acted out the way that I did, but I did. For so many years, this plagued me, but it was on a subconscious level as well. I didn't always realize it, but I did carry it with me into my adult life. And after hearing about the letting go technique from two of my personal gurus who I really enjoy, Pema Chodron and David Hawkins, I started applying this technique in my daily life as things came up. One day a few years back, I was sitting in my apartment and I recalled this memory of being a child and being scolded for being too much. Now, the memory and the surrounding feelings and emotions had come up before, but I always pushed them back down. But on this day, I decided not to. I decided we're going to practice the technique of letting go. And for me, I knew that I had to sit on my couch. I had to kind of center myself, kind of have a strong foundation. So my feet were firmly planted on the ground, and I allowed the memory to come up. And I felt the discomfort of those words all over again. And it was too much for me. It was so overwhelming that I jumped off the couch. And in that moment of jumping off the couch, I had the awareness that this could be a great release if I'm able to allow it to be. So I sat back down and I tried again. The memory came back, the associated feelings and emotions came up, and I felt this horrific discomfort come over me. And I started to breathe slowly and deeply. I tried to remain present and centered and calm. Instead of pushing away the feelings and emotions and memories, I sat with them, continuing to breathe slowly, continuing to feel that I was centered on the couch, feet firmly planted, digging my feet in. And I let myself experience that old painful emotion. And as I did, as uncomfortable as it was, I could slowly feel a slight shift, like a weight beginning to lift. And it wasn't in an instant. It wasn't easy, but each breath helped me release a little bit more of this emotional energy that I'd carried for so long. And though it felt like it was happening for an eternity in that moment, it was really only several minutes. But in that window of time, as I sat there feeling what I was feeling and allowing it to come up, I just out of nowhere took this huge, purifying, deep breath. And when I exhaled, this surge of heavy energy left me. I opened my eyes and I'm like, what just happened? I stood up and I could feel the difference. I was lighter. I was relieved. I felt the stress exit my body. And I'm like, oh my God, this worked. It really worked. The feeling I had, the emotion I had prior to was like a 10 of 10. It was horrific. But suddenly this weight lifted off of me and I felt like it was maybe a 5 or 6 out of 10. And it was in that moment that I realized the beauty of letting go, that I no longer had to carry these burdens. And in that moment, I knew that this technique had to be one of the concepts of my paradigm. I also realized in that moment that I wasn't erasing the experience. I wasn't forgetting. I was just letting go of the weight I'd been holding on to. Yes, I still have the memory, but I'm lighter. It doesn't weigh me down anymore. I don't associate with it or believe it like I used to. And a few weeks later, I noticed the memory came up again. It was still there, and there was more emotional energy around it, but remember I said it was like a 5 or a 6 out of 10? But I decided to lean into it and practice the technique again. And just like with the time before, I had the same experience. I felt the discomfort, but it wasn't as intense. And as I sat there and breathed through it again, the energy dissipated. And suddenly it felt like a 2 or 3. That experience was very heavy, and I knew that the energy doesn't always come out in just one sitting. And so I'm like, okay, you're going to do this a couple of times. And I've done it to the point that it doesn't even bother me or affect me now. Yes, I still have the memory, but there's no stored stress or repressed feelings or emotions because I released them. And this was the liberating part. It's like I felt like I had a cosmic or universal cheat sheet. And I'm like, why have I never known about this before? I want to scream it from the rooftops. This is amazing. And going back to why I, kind of gave the disclaimer at the beginning of this episode is after I had this experience, I told a friend about it and she loved it. And she's like, I think that's wonderful for you. But she's like, I have certain things in my life that are way too traumatic and I could never do that. Definitely not without professional help. And in that moment, I realized some things are too traumatic. Some things are too overwhelming for people. And so what I recommend is that if you try this technique, try it with something small. And if needed, reach out for help. Go to a mental health provider or a medical provider. Start with something that isn't overwhelming, something that isn't too much for you, or an experience that's not too intense. I'm not a mental health provider. I don't pretend to be one. The information I'm sharing here is educational. So again, please reach out for help. There's so many resources out there. I'll put a link to free resources in the episode description as I want this to work for you. And for some people, you may need guardrails and a professional to help you along the way. That's fine. And some of you may not, because you may not have these experiences that are so intense and traumatic. That's great, but I just want to be mindful about it and be realistic about it. One of the key points to understanding the concept of letting go is that it's very different from suppressing, repressing, and escaping. And according to Hawkins in Letting Go, it's 3 of the things that people do. And I think of suppression as pushing things down, ignoring them and pretending that they aren't there, but we know we're doing it. And in our society, we've likely been conditioned to suppress certain emotions, especially the difficult ones like sadness, anger, disappointment. But when we suppress our emotions, we're actually just storing that energy in our bodies. Suppression is that conscious decision to avoid certain thoughts, emotions, or memories. You might be pushing something out of your mind because it feels overwhelming at the moment, but it's still there if you haven't dealt with it. And people who suppress emotions might be bottling things up to get you through the short term, but prolonged suppression builds up, builds an emotional pressure, leads to stress, burnout. Other mental and physical manifestations come out because of it. Now, repression, on the other hand, is an unconscious process where we push distressing or threatening feelings, memories, or thoughts out of our conscious awareness. And again, suppression being a more deliberate choice, repression happens without us realizing it. The brain kind of locks away a painful or overwhelming memory or feeling to protect us. For example, a person might repress painful memories from childhood. They're still in there, stored in us subconsciously, and this definitely influences our behaviors and feelings, but the person might not even remember the events. And again, like suppression, repression can be helpful in the short term, but in the long term, it often shows up in the form of unresolved emotional issues, stress, physical symptoms like anxiety or insomnia. And when we bring repressed emotions or memories into awareness, like with the practice of letting go, it can help release the hold they have on us. The third concept Hawkins talks about is escapism, which is a different approach. And just being aware of this helps us to not use escapism, at least not again in the long term. And that involves diverting our attention or activities to distract us to avoid facing or feeling any uncomfortable emotion. Escaping isn't about hiding the memories in the same way repression and suppression do, but about creating a kind of mental or emotional vacation from the current discomfort. Some people might turn to social media, entertainment, food, exercise, or even overworking. Like me, some people may turn to drink to escape that feeling. Escaping can be healthy if done in moderation with intention and we're aware of it. Giving people a break to recharge, but when it becomes a frequent escape, it prevents us from processing and dealing with our real emotions. And then we go into avoidance where we don't address the underlying issue. And this makes it hard to achieve this emotional freedom and authentic living in the present moment as true self. So we're aware of this. And that's why I call the paradigm my roadmap. Because maybe today I need to face letting go, but maybe tomorrow I need to face surrender, and maybe I need to bring in intentionality with next right action. That's why I have it with me. Coming back to letting go, we allow our emotions and the associated feelings to resurface in a safe way. And again, safe is the key word. If it's not safe for you, don't do it. But in doing so, we bring our awareness to these feelings and emotions, recognizing it might be uncomfortable and heavy, but we let ourselves feel them fully. Because as we do this, the emotional energy is no longer stored within us, it's released. And this exercise is profound because we're releasing these stresses and emotions that weigh us down so we can feel better, lighter, live healthier, more authentic lives, as I've said multiple times. But I want to walk through this with you of what it might look like for you. And again, when you're in that safe, comfortable space, come back to this and join in. And start with something small and simple. Start with frustration, maybe with a coworker or an easy situation that's not gonna, elicit a horrific response or a traumatic response. Don't start with something too intense. As I say, there's no need to dive into the deepest, most difficult feelings on your first try. So make it easy for you so you can find this win. But start off with getting centered. Find a comfortable position where you can feel grounded and centered. And when you feel safe to do so, close your eyes and tune into your breath. Begin taking some slow, deep breaths, inhaling deeply through your nose and filling your lungs, and exhale gently through your mouth. And as you breathe, feel your body relax into this moment. Something may naturally come up, a feeling or an emotion, a memory that's been on your mind lately, something that feels like it might carry a little emotional weight, but it's not too overwhelming for you. Maybe a recent frustration or a feeling of being misunderstood, something you feel ready to work through and let go of. And as you're doing this, allow the feeling to arise. Instead of pushing the discomfort away, let the feeling and any associated emotions come to the surface. Notice the discomfort. Take a couple slow, deep breaths in and out. Is there any tightness in your chest? Any heaviness? Allow yourself to feel the full range of emotion, knowing the emotion is passing through you. I am not an angry person. I am feeling angry. Very different. So let's say anger comes up. Sit with it and observe it, knowing that it's fleeting, knowing that it'll pass. Observe it like you're looking at it from a safe distance. As the feeling comes up, observe without judgment, knowing that thoughts may arise. Your mind might try to negate or shift the memory. Just be aware that that's the ego attempting to create a story. Acknowledge that, but bring your focus back to the feelings, to the emotions. Let it sit there without judging it or changing it as you're continuing to breathe in and out, slow, deep breaths. Breathe through the discomfort. Imagine that the breath creates space around the feeling, allowing it to be there. And then picture the emotional energy lifting, dissolving with the breath as you exhale. If you feel too much discomfort, stop, or just come back to focusing on the breath. But sit there realizing you're okay, that you can get through this. And then start releasing the energy with an intention. As you exhale, release more of that energy. It's not really that you're trying. You're not putting effort in. You're not forcing anything. You're acknowledging these feelings and emotions as they are. You see the weight they're carrying and you breathe through it. And continue breathing through it as you feel comfortable doing so until you feel a shift. The emotional energy lessens. For me, this usually took anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes. Take as long as you need. But when you're ready, come back to present moment. Bring your awareness back to your breath and notice how your body feels. Does it feel lighter? Does it feel different? Often for me, letting go brings this sense of relief. I feel lighter. My shoulders aren't as tired from carrying this heavy burden. And just be gentle and kind in this moment. This is the practice of letting go. And it doesn't always happen at once. Just like with me, some emotions are deeply rooted and may take a couple sessions to release fully. But each time you let go, even a little, you're freeing yourself from that emotional weight. So be patient and compassionate. Just know that this process is gradual. And if it's too overwhelming, reach out with a mental health provider. Don't do this alone. Get the professional help that might be needed. For me, this exercise is such a powerful way to release energy that I've been holding on to, many times not even realizing I'm holding on to it. I think of someone I have resentment for or someone I'm angry at, and then I go back to the situation of why I am or why I was angry with them or resentful. I'm like, oh, you have some stored energy. That's how I know I can do the letting go technique with something simpler and easier, because all of a sudden I'm like, let go of that. Let the anger come out and pass through you. Releasing these stored stresses frees up energy in our minds and bodies, which then can translate into having more energy to be present, to focus on the things we care about, to live in alignment with who we are and who we are meant to be, a more authentic version of ourselves in this present moment. Letting go is not about erasing the past. It's about freeing ourselves from being stuck in it. You're giving yourself the gift of moving forward without the weight of yesterday's emotions dragging you down. And remember, you don't need to tackle everything at once. I didn't even think about it all that often. But when stuff would come up, I'd be aware, and I'm like, oh, maybe this is coming up because you're ready to deal with it now. And other times I would feel a resentment or an emotion like anger towards a situation, like you're holding on to something that I want to let go of. It was always my choice to let go of it when I was ready. And celebrate these small wins along the way. This journey that we're on together, our wellness journey, is about patience. It's about self-compassion. It's about trying each day. And as you continue practicing this technique, you'll find that it's so helpful on your path to inner freedom and peace. And if this episode speaks to you, I encourage you to take a few moments later on today to reflect on what you might be carrying and how you can begin to release it. One breath at a time, one moment at a time. When I look at this, for me, what has been so helpful is my meditation practice. It grounds me, it centers me, and it helps me release these stored energies and emotions each time I meditate. I teach a simple daily meditation practice because it's been so helpful for me to bring awareness, stillness, and compassion into these challenging moments. I've learned to let go in a way that's been so healing for me while also centering myself. And I'm so passionate about teaching meditation now because I was that person who said, I have too many thoughts, I can't meditate. I don't have enough time to meditate, but I could watch TV for an hour. And the type of meditation I teach is for people who have thoughts. And I've taught enough people now that have said exactly what I said. How come I didn't know about this sooner? Because sometimes we're afraid to take that next step because we don't know what we're walking into. And when we know about the discomfort we live each and every day, at least it's a known. And stepping into the unknown and learning something different can be overwhelming. And because of that, I also teach a free technique. My 5-minute daily meditation technique. That's why I'm so passionate about this. And so few people have taken me up on this offer. I'd love to be so busy and have too many people to teach, but that's not the case because people think, oh, I don't need that. And between the paradigm and the 9 concepts of the paradigm and my meditation practice, talk to some of my close friends who've seen my transformation. And that's what I wish for you. And you don't go it alone. So visit imperfectionwellness.com. Click on the link. Learn how to meditate. Take that first step. If you want to. Before we go, just a reminder, please tune in to next week's episode as we will be exploring forgiveness. And this is such a fun topic for me to discuss because I've heard from so many people and had my own experiences with forgiveness. And I don't think it's what you're thinking it might be, because what I have to share about it could surprise you. So join me next week for an eye-opening look at how forgiveness is key to unlocking even greater peace within ourselves. Thank you for joining me. And just a reminder, if you or someone you know is in need of any support, the 988 toll-free crisis hotline is available 24/7. So please use that resource if you need it. And as always, thank you for listening and wishing you the best on your wellness journey now and always. Have an amazing day.